we go. And I remembered. Thank you so much, Christine. Okay, so I'd like to welcome back Christine Woodcock. When did you come? Like, was it May or something, or April?
Yep, somewhere in there.
Something like that. So you were such a smash that everybody wanted you back. So
that's nice.
we did a survey with your topics, and this was the survey that had the most votes. So I'd like to welcome you back. Christine is from Genealogy Tours of Scotland. And apart from doing presentations and helping people find their ancestors, Christine gets to accompany groups of genealogy researchers to Scotland, where they can immerse themselves in their Scottish ancestry. And you just told me that you are now, can you just repeat what you told me about?
Yeah, so I just took on, I actually founded the Scottish SIG for the OGS. I took a break from it for a bit, and I've just gone back and I've taken on programming. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know what SIG is, it's Special Interest Group. And so I'm excited for you. That's awesome. So we're going to be getting some announcements from Christine about some seminars and webinars and all kinds of wonderful things. So stay tuned for that. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking now so Christine can get started. So thanks again for coming and speaking with us, and take it away, Christine.
Thanks, and you're most welcome. I enjoy doing this. So just as Jane said, I will circulate to her and she can circulate to the group. We have regular webinars. We start up again mid-September, maybe early September. I've got 2 or 3 weeks anyway. And so I have people, some of my colleagues in Scotland are going to be giving presentations, for instance. So we have 2 streams. One is sort of like, let's get started, which I do myself, and the other is more advanced for people who already know that stuff. And that's where we get the speakers from further afield. And people are welcome to join in, to watch those at the time that they're presented. So lots of good learning happening, and we'd love to have you as a part of that. I am just going to turn my video off and then we can get started. I'd probably ask everybody else to too, because I have the attention span of like a gnat, and I get easily distracted if I see other people. Okay, so this time we are going to talk about online sources for Scottish genealogy research. I actually have quite a bit to share. Of course, the #1 website that you have to use is Scotland's People. And I know it's a headache for people. I really do understand that. But it's the only place where you can see the actual documents. Everywhere else is either a transcript. Most often it is an index, and you miss out on so much information. So really you need to know to use Scotland's People website. And actually, oh, I think I've already done it. I was going to say, I actually do a walkthrough with people of the website live so that they're not wasting credits, because that's everybody's. Could somebody just mute their mic, please? That's everybody's real concern on this, is that they are wasting credits. And of course, it's because we're not really familiar with. We don't. You know what? I think Ancestry has made a lot of people lazy. I like Ancestry as a database, but people don't use their detective skills, right? They just get on there, they click, they see a record, nope, not mine, on to the next record, nope, not mine, on to the next record, nope, not mine. And you can do that a bazillion times because it's no money. Whereas Scotland's People, you can't do that, or you waste credits and you waste money. And so you really need to hone that inner detective. And it's the inner detective that got us interested in genealogy in the first place. So it's once you get that back, you're pretty well sailing with it. Okay, so we've said that Scotland's People is the one you need to learn to use. It is the website for the General Registrar's Office. That's the person who's in charge of all the vital statistics. And let's see what you can find on there online. So there's the old Parish Registers. So statutory registration in Scotland began in 1855. In England, it was 1837. It took the Scots a little while to get caught up, and we started in 1855. So anything that you're researching prior to 1855, you're going to want to look in the old parish registers. And I'll give you just a hint of stuff that I learned the hard way, and that is, if you are searching in the statutory registers for a birth, a marriage, or a death that occurred in 1838, you're going to come up with no results because you're looking in the wrong database. Been there, done that, learned from my mistakes. But you can get, you can get some pretty good information in there. So these were records that were kept by the minister of the church and documenting really the life of the church. So there was, it's not just births, marriages, and deaths. There's a whole whack of other church records, but the ones that you are primarily going to want, especially in the beginning, are the parish registers. So we do, for statutory registration, it's birth, marriage, death. For old parish registers, you're looking at baptisms, and you're looking at burials, and you're looking at banns. So instead of marriage, it's banns. Banns was, the proclamation was read from the pulpit, and that was the intention of the couple to get married. So the minister would get up and he would read the banns, and that would be, these people intend to get married. And basically it was, if you have any reason why they shouldn't, let us know. And that was done for 3 successive Sundays prior to the people getting married. And it was done in each parish church. So it was done in the bride's parish church, and it was done in the groom's parish church. So sometimes you'll come up, you'll be researching somebody from Scotland, and you'll say, but they were married twice and they were married in 2 different places. Well, actually, no, they weren't. It's because that's what you found is the crying of the banns. And that was in the bride's church that they proclaimed the intention of the couple to marry, and also in the groom's church. And that's why there's that little bit of confusion in there. Also, there are census records available on Scotland's People. The census was taken every year every 10 years from 1801. The most recent one was last year, right? This year, I guess, be 2021. Yeah, you know what? I've lost track. Yeah, so there should be one this year as well. The most recent one available on Scotland's People is the 1911. This year is when the 1921 should have been released, but because of COVID and the Scotland's People Centre being closed and the National Records of Scotland being closed, there was nobody in the office to do the work of getting that digitized and getting it OCR readable so that people could search it. So it's going to be delayed probably until June of 2022. Another thing to thank COVID for. So I said that the censuses were taken right from 1801, and they were, but in 1801, 1811, 1821, and 1831, they were just numbers. It was just statistics. It was really just the number of people in the household. So because there's no genealogically helpful information, those have not been placed on Scotland's People. And really, unless you're a statistician, yeah, I've seen them. You don't want to. So from 1841 forward, you can get them every 10 years. And in 1841, there was a little bit of a, they were directed, the enumerators were directed to round down the age of everybody over 15 to the nearest 5. So anybody 15 would show as 15, anybody 18 would show as 15. Everybody, yeah, so I'm not sure why they did that. There's not a lot of explanation. It was done in England as well. Fortunately, they stopped doing it after that. Okay, so we also have birth. This is 1855 forward. You can get the actual image of the birth records. Now there is $100, I was going to say 100-year closure period on those, but you can order them. So if your ancestor was born, so you should be able to get right now 1921, and if your ancestor was born, say in 1930, you can order that certificate. You just can't see it online. If you're in the Scotland's People Centre, you can actually see the document, but you can't print it out, you can't download it, you can just transcribe it. Yeah, you can't copy, you can't do anything with it other than just transcribe it, but at least you can see it. And that's really helpful because it really helps you to fill in the more recent branches of your tree. There's also marriage records on Scotland's People. And again, that's from 1855 forward. There's a closure period of 75 years on those. So it would be, I guess the most recent ones would be what, 1950? Yeah, 1950 or 1951. And then the same, you can get the more recent ones. In death, there's a 50-year closure period on getting those, having those made public. So they are there, the documents are there, they're just not available online because of the privacy laws. Scotland's People has wills and testaments. These are, of course, fabulous. Everybody who does genealogy knows that wills are really, you know, the jewel. You can get all kinds of information about relationships, and you can get information about the lifestyle, and a whole, you know, lots and lots of good information in there, not just about what they owned, but who they're bequeathing to. And then you can get relationships as well regarding marriages and marriages of children and all sorts of other things. So the wills, to see the will is 10 credits as opposed to the 6. But again, you get so much information, and whether you're looking at a 2-page will or a 22-page will, it's still only the 10 credits. So they've changed the way that Scotland's People, well, I guess for newcomers, it's not changed. It's been around for a few years. For me, it's changed. So now you can research, you can do the search, and the index comes back, and that's free. So it helps you to narrow down, you know, sort of who it is you want to focus in on. It used to be every page had 25 returns on it, results on it, and each page was a credit. Well, they've taken that away. So now, you know, whether there's, you know, 10 results or like I said, 250, it's still, you're not paying anything for that. So you can look through there and at least get the information, whether the record's available. And then to see the image, it is 6 credits. So credits are purchased in bundles of 30, and they are £7.50. And if you do everything correctly, you're getting the actual image for about $2.12. So really, really cheap. And then it's yours to do with what you want, other than publish it. So, you know, you can put it on your computer, you can print it out. If you leave it and don't do anything with it, you can go back later and view it again and again and again without spending any more credits. Once you've purchased it to view, then you can go back, you know, dozens of times and find it again, and you don't pay any more money for that. But then for the wills, it's 10 credits, and it's the same. You can go back, you know, however many times you want. They also have soldiers' wills on there. So soldiers' wills were the last page in the pay book, and it's holographic. It's written in the person's own handwriting, and essentially the soldiers were told the night before they went to active duty that they should probably write out their will in case anything happened. And it's, you know, very short, but it does give who they are bequeathing, you know, all their worldly goods to, and they sign it, and their regiment number, regiment and rank number are on there as well, rank and regiment. So if you find your soldier's will on there, it's because he has fallen in action. If he did not fall in action, the will continued to go on with him to whatever his next assignment was. There's tribunal appeals on there. These are always quite interesting. The tribunal appeals were for anybody who felt that to go off and serve in the army would be a hardship for them or their family, and they could make an appeal to the board. And so there's documents in there supporting that, and then you get the results of that as well. There are valuation rolls. So valuation rolls, we would consider these to be sort of property tax rolls, and they were done every year from 1855 forward. The ones that are online are in 5-year increments. So the way that they've set it up, and this, they actually asked for feedback from the users of Scotland's People. So what they did was you can see the 1851 census, the 1855 valuation rule, the 1861 census, the 1865 valuation rule, the 1871 census, 75 valuation rule, and so on. And that helps you to track your ancestors every 5 years, as opposed to waiting for the censuses to come out and do it every 10. There are maps and plans in there. These are not the same as the maps that are available on the National Library of Scotland website, which, by the way, is fabulous. It's a time suck though, but you can definitely get lost in there. And they have, the National Library of Scotland has, I believe, 2.5 million maps and less than 10% or just slightly more than 10% have been digitized and placed online, and they're not just of Scotland, and they are fabulous. These maps and plans from Scotland's people are maps and plans that would be found in other document records. So for instance, if you had a court case and somebody was murdered on a street, for instance, then the person who was doing the investigation would have drawn sort of the crime scene, because they didn't have photographers going out to do that. They didn't have forensics the way we do. So he would have drawn, it would be a hand-drawn picture, and it would be like, the street corner and maybe a couple of buildings and then where the body was found and all that sort of stuff. Similarly, if an architect wanted to put forth a plan to, say, build a new church or build a new building or manse for a church, anything like that, then those would be in the land records. So those sorts of things are what they've compiled. They've taken those all out and compiled them into one collection called Maps and Plans, and that's the sort of thing that you would find on Scotland's people. Personally, I don't find them hugely helpful. I guess I would if I had an ancestor who was caught up in a court case, but apart from that, I don't find them hugely helpful, but just wanted to let you know they're there. Recently brought out, so the big buzz at the beginning of the year was finally the Kirk session records have been brought out. These have been sitting in virtual volumes literally for almost 15 years. It's been unbelievable. For 6 years, they've been promising to bring them online, and every time you asked, the answer was next year, but not before April. And that honestly, that was the answer for 6 years now. Crazy. And I guess part of the thing was trying to figure out how best to manage these. So they're not searchable. They are literally in a virtual volume. And what you have to do is find the church, find the parish, first of all, that your ancestor was in, find that church, and then scroll through page by page by page until you find the information about your ancestor. Because there's work involved, and it can be quite cumbersome. Personally, I love them because there's so much gossip in there. It's like the modern day fairy tale or the modern day soap opera. I could get carried away reading them. I don't even care they're not my ancestors. I think they're just kind of juicy. So and the most common reason people would want to use the Kirk session records are to find out legitimacy, because if a woman was about to have a baby and she wasn't married, then she was brought before the Kirk session, and the Kirk session was the board of elders, so like the church court, and admonished and questioned until she coughed up who the father was. And so quite often that's where you'll find out that information. And then of course she would be punished, she would be fined, and so all that is in there as well. The father generally came forward as well. He would be fined and admonished. But you'll also find things like, people swearing on a Sunday, taking the Lord's name in vain, people working, people playing golf on a Sunday, it really does give you an incredible flavor of the times in which your ancestor was living, because the church was everything. That was your moral compass, and they really believed that they had a huge responsibility to keep you in check. So they are, as I say, fascinating reading. Getting away from that though, because of that, because they are a little bit cumbersome to go through, they are free. So you don't spend any credits at all looking through the Kirk session records. So whether you find your ancestor or not, and whether you have to troll through 5, different churches or just one, doesn't matter. You're not wasting credits. You're not spending any credits on there. The most recent addition are the 1820 Rebellion Papers. These would be, I think they're legal paper, like court papers. These were people who had, there's sort of an uprising of workers who weren't very happy with working conditions and a whole pile of other things. And so these are the records from that. Again, they're in a virtual volume. They are not searchable other than you scanning through them. And again, they are free for you to view. So I said that you get birth records, and this is an example of a birth record. And it says, let me just find the one I want. Okay, so it's actually the one at the bottom. So this is a birth record, and what you see here is it names the child. It gives you the date, time, and place where the child was born. So this one is Agnes Fowler, and she was born 1898, April the 22nd, 3 3:30 in the morning at Nimitz Row, Longer by Airdrie. And then it gives you the sex of the child. So in her case, it's female. The two above that, you can see are male. And then you can see it gives the father. So it gives the baby's father. His name was Joseph Fowler. And his job was a coal miner, sorry. Yeah, coal miner. And then his wife was Margaret Fowler, M.S. Johnston. So MS means maiden surname. And a woman retains her maiden surname on all of the documents in Scotland, with the exception of the census. So whether you search her by her maiden name or her married name, you should be able to come up with the same record. It's on her death, it's on her birth, it's on her marriage certificate. The only thing it's not on, as I said, is the census. And the census really wasn't about that, right? The census was about who was in the household, who was the head of the household, and then the relationship of everybody else in that household to the head. So it doesn't give maiden names. Then below Margaret's name, where it says Margaret Fowler, M.S. Johnston, it says 1882, September the 8th, New Monkland. That is the date and place where the parents were married. So if you don't already have their marriage certificate, you can plug that in and go and find it. The next column says Joseph Fowler, father, present. That is who reported the information about the birth to the registrar. And this is really important. It doesn't mean that he was present at the birth, because generally men just weren't then. What it does mean is that he was present in the registrar's office. And the way that a child became legitimate, the mother had to prove legitimacy. And the way that she did that was she sent her husband or the father of the child to go and register the birth. If he was away at work, or he was away at war, or he was away, fishing, or had gone, over to America for a short time, then she could send in the marriage registration, and that would suffice. The child would still be then considered legitimate, even though, remember, the child might be listed as legitimate because she has the marriage record, but that might not be his baby if he's away. So you've got to do some math around there as well. And if he's not there, then generally you get that the child is listed as illegitimate. If you see documentation or writing in the margin, as you do on this document in the far left-hand column, it means that there's a record of corrected entry. And what that is that the registrar has received new information about the event since the event was first registered. Most often when you see this on a birth, it's because the father has come forward or been made to come forward. It's generally because the child has been illegitimate, and you can now get the record of corrected entry, who will name the father. The record of corrected entry, you can see that on a red line. When you first come back with your search results, it will say there's one corrected entry. You click on that and it's free to view. So it's no more credits to get the updated information. You just get this, you spend the 6 credits to get what you've got here in front of you. So this is a marriage, and this is for my great-grandmother. Why is this on here? This actually isn't a marriage. This is her death. Sorry, this is her death. And it's, so it says Agnes Crawford, she's a widow, that she died at, where she died, and her parents. All right, let's do this. So here's death. This is her again. So this is the top one. It's Agnes Mack. And it shows here that she was, this is her death, sorry. This shows up here that she was married twice. So you can see it says Agnes Mack, married to Hugh Crawford, coal miner, and then second to George Blair Mack, and he worked in the quarry and it was since retired. She died on 1951, February the 2nd, at her home on Airdrie Road in Hill End, Caldercrooks, at looks like 1 o'clock in the morning. She was 77. Her parents were Henry Fowler, who was a coal miner, and Jeannie Carrick, and Jeannie's maiden name was sorry, Jeannie Fowler was her married name, and Jeannie Carrick was her maiden name. So Agnes Fowler married Hugh Crawford. So she was Agnes Crawford for a while. Hugh's my brick wall. He disappeared. But then she subsequently married Geordie Mack. And so she went by Agnes Mack, obviously. But Agnes's mother was Jeannie Fowler, and Jeannie's married name had been Carrick. Agnes's father was Henry Fowler, and he was a coal miner. And you can see, obviously, that by the time she's 77, they're both dead. It gives the cause of death. In this case, it's senility and congestive heart failure, and it was certified by the doctor. And Hugh Crawford, her grandson, is the person who gave that information to the registrar. And then it gives Hugh's address. This is the 1911 census. So it looks like it's for my grandfather. Let me just find him here. I can't zoom in on this or you lose it. So what it tells you is what I really like. So this is the 1911 census, and it has way more information on it than any of the previous ones. So it gives you the name of the place. It gives you the house number. It gives you the number of rooms with windows. And then it gives you a listing of who is in the house. It gives you the relation to the head of the house. And then it tells you whether they are male or female, and it tells you their age. It also, then you see 3 columns. So I'm not sure if you can see my pointer, but hopefully you can. So these 3 columns here, these are known as the fertility columns, okay? And so here it says 1277. That means that this couple have been married 12 years, and that they had 7 children born alive, and that 7 are still living, sorry. Here you can see that this couple had been married 3 years. They had 2 children, 2 still alive. This couple had quite sad story, it looks like. They've been married 27 years, they had 10 children, and now they only have 6 still living. So what that was able to do for me, for one of my father's family, one of his aunts, they were in the situation where they had been married 3 years. They had 3 children born to them and only 1 still alive. And so I went looking, and what I discovered was that they had had a set of twins who were very sick when they were born and only lasted for 2 hours. But, you know, now that you know that there have been children, so for this family here that had the 10 children and 6 are no longer here, you know that there's 4 deaths that you want to go find, 4 children that had at one point belonged to this family. And then here at 6, they've been married 6 years. They have no children, but they do have sons in here. So what that means is that this son is probably a stepchild. So this is Agnes Crawford and her son Thomas. So this is actually the family. So this is my great grandmother and my uncle Tom, and my grandfather Henry and his brother Hugh and Joseph. So they don't have any children born to them as a couple, but Agnes did have children. She had 4 sons. All right. And then over here, you get what their profession is, you get where they were born, and then whether they had any disabilities or not. So really quite a lot of really good information in here. So some websites to look at in terms of location, where your ancestors were located. The first place you're going to want to look are the Statistical Accounts of Scotland. These are freely available online. The website is in the handout that I provided, and it's also right here in the last bullet point. So this was done twice, and it was a questionnaire, a standard questionnaire that was sent out to all 900 parish ministers, and they filled it out. So they asked standard questions like geography of the parish, agriculture within the parish, industry within the parish, what the population of the parish was. There was a whole list of, I mean, I've just narrowed it down here. And then it was miscellany. So sometimes you'll get information about, you know, groups of people emigrating. For instance, in Ophir Parish in Orkney, just outside of Stromness, it will tell you that the minister was not at all happy with the Hudson's Bay Company coming and recruiting men, going away to the savages of Canada for 5 years at a time for some paltry amount of money, when they should have been either off fighting for their king and country, or they should have been at home tending their farms and looking after their family. Gazetteers, that's available on a website called Scottish-Places.info, and these have maps on them. They have, again, the geography of the place. They have the history, how it came to be a parish, how long it's been around. And then they also have a link to RCAMH, which was Royal Commission of Ancient and Historical Monuments. It's now part of Historic Edinburgh, Scotland. No, Historic Environment Scotland. Historic Environment Scotland, yeah. And so you'll see a little signpost on there that looks like a street sign. And if you click on that, you will come up with old images of whatever they have available for that place and time. Maps, of course, are fabulous. Maps help to ground us in time and space, and they give us a real view of what our family's situation was like. So this map hangs on my wall. It is the 1647 bird's eye view of the Royal Mile. And you can see what those very dark gray lines, it looks like. When you zoom in, those are individual tenements. So you can see just by looking at this how crowded Edinburgh was. At that time, of course, Edinburgh really was just the Royal Mile. And it looks here like, this always reminds me of a fish, right? And this is the backbone of the fish, and here's the tail, and this is sort of the fins. This actually was a wall, and it divided Edinburgh from the Canongate. The Canongate was a separate parish, and people had to pass through there, and there were rules about passing through, and there were rules about what time you had to be back. There were fines if you didn't close the gate. There's a whole bunch. In here tended to be quite poor as opposed to up in here, but these were very different. Well, I mean, there's a lot of poverty here too, but these were very different in terms, they were different market towns. And so, you know, you have the division on here. Today, oh, I'm sorry. Try that again. Today, this is the Edinburgh Castle, and today this would be Holyrood Park, where Holyrood House is. And this is, I mean, it says the Royal Mile, but it's slightly longer than that, not by a whole lot. And then because Edinburgh was the seat of royalty, probably 2/3 of Scottish history played out on these streets, which is really kind of fascinating. So you've got, you know, if it's not this main street, then it's these little closes and wines that come off of here. It's really fascinating to think of that. There also at one point was a reservoir up here, which was supplied the town's water. You can see if you're in Edinburgh, you can still see the old wellheads where people would go to collect their water. And this was also rumored to be where they duked the witches. So they would, you know, if they thought you were a witch, they'd put you in there. And if you sunk, you were innocent. And if you bobbed back up, they were right in having drowned you because you had been a witch. And this here in the center is St. Giles Cathedral. So as I say, maps are fabulous. They show you the topography. I mean, you can see that there's a mountain range out here. This would be the Pentlands. You can see that there was water at one point. Just really, you know, quite fascinating information. If you have ancestors from Sutherland, there are a few websites. The Rogart Heritage Society, that's one of the parishes within the county of Sutherland. History links in Dornoch. Dornoch was the town, very historic, lots and lots of history in there. And when people were cleared, they tended to wander into Dornoch because there really wasn't anywhere else for them to go. And there is an inn in there. It might just be houses now, but the building still stands. And that was an inn where people who had been displaced through the clearances could go and stay until they kind of got on their feet. The local museum there called History Links is a fabulous resource. And, you know, if you're on Facebook, sorry, if you're on Facebook, you're going to want to connect with History Links. Make sure you're following their page. The history that they print out on a regular basis is incredible. Helmsdale, there's a statue in Helmsdale right just above the harbor. It's called the Emigrants, and it's a statue of a family who are getting ready to leave their home and board a ship and go presumably to Canada. The twin of that statue is in downtown Winnipeg, and it is called the Immigrants. And that's because a lot of people who were cleared from the Helmsdale area ended up in the Red River Valley, the Red River settlement. Helmsdale has a museum called Timespan. Timespan does have an archivist. Has an archivist, and they have copies of the rent rolls and removal lists from the Sutherland estate on site there. So they've gone down to the National Library of Scotland where the Sutherland estate papers are, and they have made copies for their own use, and people who are in Helmsdale can go in and see those through the archivist there. Galsby, which is the next community, there is also the Galsby Heritage Society. Spanglefish is the name of the website host. You can get quite a bit of good information in there as well. Strathnaver. So Strathnaver was, again, one of the places that was cleared. It's in the north of Sutherland. And their museum there, they're just in the middle of refurbishing it, but you can go in and really learn about what life was like in the time of just prior to the clearances, and then time of the clearances, and then after. So it really kind of focuses in on that sort of decade or so. And you can, from there, they send you out on a tour, self-guided tour, and you can go through the Strath and you can see where the remnants of the buildings are that were in fact cleared, where people actually, it was a thriving community at one point. If you have family from the Hebrides, this is the Outer Hebrides, so that would be Harris, Lewis, Uist, I'm going to say, I think, Benbecula. So Bill Lawson is a genealogist in Scotland. He dedicated his life to uncovering resources for people in the Hebrides who were from the Hebrides. He used a raft of different documents. He used school records and burial records and church records and newspapers and estate papers and all kinds of information to kind of put genealogies together. He has a number of books. I believe they're, I'm not sure if they're parish by parish or if they're island by island. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen them. Anyway, this website is an attempt to get those books digitized and made available online. If you have ancestors from either Tiree or Call, there is the Isle of Tiree genealogy, and there's also the Isle of Call, which is a sister island. Great information in here. They've got the census records, they've got a map, they've got births, marriages, and deaths. Sorry, births, marriages, and baptisms, cemetery records, family trees, statistics, just all sorts of emigrant ships, all kinds of information on there. Orkney, if you have Orcadian roots, then Orkney Jar is the website that you're going to want to check out. And again, some really good information in here. They have images from the island. They have folklore stories. They have the history of Orkney. They have place names and common surnames and quite a bit of other things in there. And they also link you into the Orkney Family History Society and the Orkney Archives. If you have ancestors in the Northeast, so it's Aberdeen area, then this is Northeast Scotland Roots. This is not the same as the Aberdeen and Northeast Scotland Family History Society. This is a separate standalone website with different records. You know, there may be overlaps, but this is not their website. This is not the website of the Family History Society. So definitely worth a look. Shetland, the Shetland Museum is also home of the archives, and they have their collections. So their collections are not digitized, but their catalog, you can certainly search it to see what they have online. Again, they have folklore information, and they have photographs, and they have some history and just quite a bit of really good information on there. Orkney and Shetland were actually given to Scotland as part of a wedding dowry. So that's, you know, kind of part of their history, which is, I think, quite fascinating. And then there's the Scottish Family History Societies. So this is one website you're going to want to tab and go in there. When you go in there, you're going to go to the membership tab, which I believe is on the left-hand menu. And it's not for you to join because you're not a society. You have to be a society to belong to the Scottish Association of Family History Societies. What it does when you click on the membership tab is it populates a list, an alphabetical listing of the family history societies, and it gives you direct links to their individual websites. So it's sort of the first stop of first port of call. So occupations, this is Lady Victoria Colliery. It's in Newton Grange, just outside of Edinburgh. It was a very vibrant colliery at one point. It has since been turned into the Scottish Mining Museum. What I love about it is that the guides are ex-miners, so the information you get from them is superior to what you would get from just sort of a school kid going in there on their summer holidays. They can really give you lots of detail. They give you details like they were given a token every morning, and then they gave that token back at the end of the day, so that the people in charge would know that everybody who went in came out. The miners had to have their pockets searched every day to make sure there was nothing flammable in them that they were carrying into the mine. So no cigarettes, no lighters, no matches, no tinfoil paper that was inside the cigarette packages, absolutely nothing. If that was found, the men were not just sent home, they were fired. You were gone because you were seen as a risk, and they couldn't take that risk with the mine. So lots of really cool information in there. If you're not sure what your ancestor did, there's a website. It comes up as Hall's Genealogy. I think it initially started, or maybe still is, I don't know, as a personal family history website. But in there, they do have occupations. And so you can have a look through there. It's an alphabetical listing, and you simply scroll down to the first letter of whatever your ancestor's occupation was, and then they will give you a description of it. If you have ancestors who were miners, you absolutely want to take note of this website. It's the Scottish Mining website. This is not the same as the one for the Mining Museum. This is separate. And it has a listing of the inspector reports for any accidents that took place. So when you go in here, you're going to go to accidents, and when you click into accidents and disasters, you get this grid. Find the year that your ancestor was in the accident, click on that, and you will find a listing of all of the accidents that were in there. So this is the listing for 1872. These are my ancestors in here. 1872, October the 16th at Greenfield Colliery. The Hamilton Coal Company was the owner. The people who died were Tommy Dougherty, Andrew Carrick, and William Carrick. Tommy was 30, Andrew was 18, and William was 50. William was my 3 times great-grandfather. Andrew was his only son. And so the cause of the accident was breakage of rope while ascending. This was at the end of the shift. They were coming back up to the ground, and the rope let go of the lifts. It was basically just a wooden cage. So you can see the mine inspector's report. By the breakage of a round wire rope at Greenfield Colliery, 3 persons were killed. The men were ascending the shaft about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and when near the surface, the rope broke. The cage on which they were ascending fell 100 fathoms to the bottom of the pit. They were all killed. The rope had drawn coals all day and was not overloaded. It had only been in use 12 months and had only raised 5,000 tons of coal. The pulley and drum were small, but I could not find anything to account for the sudden fracture. So, this is devastating enough, because Jeannie Carrick, who we saw her name earlier, Jeannie, it wasn't just her husband and son that she lost. She's now left with 4 daughters, I think. But the whole town did, because these mines didn't employ thousands of people. They employed maybe 50 men or 70 men, or at the most maybe 100, 110. And the housing was supplied by the mine. So everybody in that community, their husbands or sons, worked at the mine. They all knew each other. Many of them were related, because you would have brothers who would, might have 4 or 5 brothers who all worked at the mine. And so therefore their families took up 4 of the houses that were in that community of maybe, as I say, maybe 100 houses. So they all knew each other. So it was devastating, not just for Jean and her family and her daughters, but also for the entire community, because they had lost three members of their community. Sad story, of course, is that Tommy Dougherty, who was 30 years old, this was his first day in the mine. And Tommy decided, you know what, mining life is not for me, thanks. And so he clearly said, you know, it's been a blast, guys, not doing it again. I wish you all the best. I'm off to bigger and better. Never had the opportunity to make a next move because he was killed. Then over here, you can see newspaper report. And if I click on that, I get the associated newspaper reports that went along with this accident. So I've got the mine inspector's report, and then I also have the newspaper accounts. So just another addition to this is that the housing, as I said, was provided for by the mine. But in fact, the men, because there was no longer a miner living in, the home, the home was, they weren't able to use the home anymore. And then on the next page, as I say, so there's the newspaper report, and that gave me the details. So there's two there. One is from the Glasgow Herald and one is from the Hamilton Advertiser, and it gives me more details. This is where I found out that Andrew, it was his, or Tommy Dougherty, it was his first day, and his only day on there was by reading these reports. If your ancestor worked in shale oil, so shale oil was quite popular in the Lothians, so sort of between Glasgow and Edinburgh, in around the Linlithgow area. And shale oil, of course, was used for paraffin wax. And this website will give you some kind of interesting information, actually. There's occupations, so it'll tell you what the different occupations were. It also will give you some oral histories. And they do have employment records, so they don't have a lot, and it's really hard when you have ancestors who were in these. It's really hard to find employee records. Usually if you get records for mines or canal building or shipbuilding or anything large like that, you're getting records that have to do with the running of the business and the infrastructure. You're not getting employee records. So they have managed to find a few of these employment records, and they have made those available. So that's really quite interesting. New Lanark is a fabulous place if you're ever out. It is right around the Linlithgow area. It is a mill, and it has been preserved and is now a museum. And as I say, it's a fabulous day out. It was run by a man by the name of Robert Owen, and he was really very innovative. He did this kind of as a social experiment. So what he did was he believed that if you treated people well, they would in turn treat you well. And so he purchased this with his father-in-law, and then the father-in-law sort of just left him to it. And it was a whole community. He believed in education, and so he had a school built on site, and it wasn't just for children, it was also for adults. So on their time off, they could go and be educated. He believed in culture and music, and he had regular concerts and dances so people could have some enjoyment. There was a store where he bought things in bulk, and things he allowed his workers to use credit, and then he would take that money back from their pay. But because he purchased in bulk, they were able to get their goods at a cheaper rate than if they had to go into the nearest village to shop. He also took a really small percentage of their pay, and I want to say it's about 1%. It might even have been less than that. And he withheld that. And the reason he did that was so that if one of the workers got sick or got injured, then the money was there to pay for whatever care they needed. So it was sort of like the beginnings of the national health, although he just did it for himself and his workers. As I say, it's a fabulous day out to go and see. And there are records for New Lanark. They are on deposit with the University of Glasgow archives. And they have, court proceedings and employee transfers, poor relief applications, rent books, baptisms, communion rolls, death records, school records, just all sorts of information on there. And they are also available online. So other archives that have their catalogs online, but not necessarily their holdings. The University of Glasgow has the business records for the whole of Scotland. So regardless of where the business was, the records are on deposit with the University of Glasgow. You just go to the University of Glasgow Archives website and you can have a look through there. Shipbuilding is split between the University of Glasgow Archives and the City of Glasgow Archives. I'm not sure why, maybe because it was so large, I have no idea. Jute, everything to do with the jute industry, those records are on deposit with the University of Dundee. Coal mining, iron and steel with the National Records of Scotland. Again, that's all to do with infrastructure and ownership, almost nothing to do with employees. Canal building, the same. If your ancestor was a merchant locally, then those records, business records, would probably be with the local regional archives. The larger records for businesses would be more like the woolen mills and brewing, so the like Tennant's Brewery, the distilleries, all those larger businesses, large department stores, those would be with the University of Glasgow. If he was sort of the grocery in your local town, then those records should be with the local archives. Diseases, back to the Hall's genealogy, and you will, again, there's a whole listing of the diseases of what your ancestor may have died of. Old occupations, there's also a listing on a website called Scotland's Family. Now, this used to be a really, really good website with a whole pile of information. I don't know if the person has died, gone into a nursing home, what the issue is, but most of the links on there are broken anymore. But I give you that just as a reference. If your ancestor was involved with witchcraft, the University of Edinburgh has taken those, the trial records, and made those available. I believe they're in transcription. This actually is a stone. This is in Dornoch, and it's where the last witch was hanged in Scotland. Janet Horn. It actually literally is in somebody's backyard. You just kind of peer over the small gate, small fence, and you can take a photograph. Scottish indexes, they are constantly indexing records from the National Records of Scotland. So they've got, I don't know if I have a listing here. Yeah, they have paternity decrees, they have asylum admissions, they have prison registers, high court records, just a ton of information on there. It is a work in progress. So just because you don't see it the first time you check back in 6 months or so. The better part of this is not only are those records, so the indexes are free for you to search if you want the record. There's a really nominal charge. And they will go and get the record for you and digitize it and then send it to you. But they also will do professional genealogy research for you in the National Records of Scotland. So if there's something there that you want that you don't see on there, you can contact them and they will do the research for you for a small fee. If your ancestor was in the Boer War, there is a website for concentration camp. And then the soldier records are on both Find My Past and Ancestry. Find My Past, I'm assuming Ancestry as well. I haven't used it in a while, but Find My Past, you get the soldier's entire career file. So if he was a soldier for, he only really signed up and didn't do anything, then you'll get maybe 1 or 2 pages. If he was a career soldier, you may get 100 pages. So, but you do get the whole thing on Find My Past. And that is because after 1707 and the Union of the Crowns, everybody fought in the British Army, regardless of whether they were, even if they were with a Highland regiment, they still were in the British Army. So those records are at the National Archives in Kew in London, and the National Archives have been fabulous with getting people access to those records, and they did have a partnership with Find My Past to get those digitized and made available, unlike National Records of Scotland. Immigration, emigration, everybody of course wants to know this. I will be doing a webinar in that list that I'm going to send to Jane. There is a webinar on emigration from Scotland, so you're welcome to join that. It'll be far more detailed than this. Ships lists are on Ancestry, but you only get them from 1870 forward because that's when you started getting, ships lists. That's when, so steamships started around the 1850s, and it was after that that you can get the manifests and the ships list. Those are also on Find My Past. Prior to that, they were merchant ships, and they weren't really in the business of transporting people. They were in the business of transporting merchandise for trade. So the records don't have a listing of the passengers necessarily, but there are places where you can go. There are records where you can go and pull that information out and recreate a passenger list. So it may be from the Treasury records where, you know, the Treasury paid for 140 Jacobites to be sent over to the east coast of America, to the colonies. It may be Treasury records where, you know, 100 men were sent over to Boston. They were rounded up as Covenanters and they were seen as prisoners of war. And so because it was treason, they were then sent, their sentence was transportation. And so they've taken the Treasury records and listed those people. And then similarly here in Ontario, at the Ontario Archives, I was looking actually at land records, and I noticed that for Lanark County, when I was looking at the land records for there, all of the extracts listed the name of the people, where they had sailed from, and the ship that they sailed on, and they all came over in 1815, and they all landed in Lanark County. So the people have taken that kind of stuff. The best website for that is called Immigrant Ships Transcription Guild, or immigrantships.net, and they will have a listing of all of those recreated passenger lists in there. Aberdeen University has an online database that you can plug into. It's not comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination, but you know what? You don't know unless you try. Simply put in the surname of your ancestor, hit search, and hope for the best. Chances are excellent that you will come up with nothing, but as I said, it's always better to check than not. And that's just literally on the Aberdeen University website. If your ancestor was a Covenanter, so these are people who were against the changes to religion back in the 1600s, the mid 1600s, Ancestry does have records. They are hard to find, so your best bet is to go to Google and simply put in Covenanter Archives Ancestry, and then you'll come up with this. Scottish Covenanters, these are in the High Court records because they were tried for treason. You'll get sort of the index information. The court records themselves will give you the first name and last name, the place as transcribed, the county, and then what the crime was. So you can see in here that the person, they had been in rebellion. 218 people had been in rebellion. They were all guilty, and they all had to forfeit their horse, their sheep, their goats, and their goods. And this took place at Inverary Castle, Inverary Jail in 1685. And the 218 people were in rebellion against the Earl of Argyll. So this information right here is available on the National Records of Scotland website to do with their catalog. The actual records themselves, you have to get somebody to go in and get those for you. They don't have the manpower or the resources to be able to do that. So you either need to go yourself or you need to get a genealogist to go for you. And if you are unsure who to contact, feel free to email me and I can put you in touch with someone. Again, Immigrant Ships is the best place to go for the Jacobites, for the listings there. There are a whole pile of colonial societies that came up in the late 1800s, early 1900s to settle Canada, to make sure that Canada stayed as British as possible. And so the Glasgow Colonial Society, the Lanark Society Settlers, Selkirk Settlers, these are all records. Lanark Society Settlers, there's a book. It was from Global Genealogy. It may now be on Amazon. I'm not sure. Selkirk Settlers, that is all on Canadiana Online. I have a feeling that Lanark Society Settlers, there's a database for them too. But you know what? I think that it may be under Google Books. I'm not 100% sure. The Glasgow Colonial Society, I'm not sure where those records ended up. I did try when I was in the archives in Glasgow. They didn't seem to have a whole lot. The British Newspaper Archive is fabulous. If you have a membership to Find My Past, you also get access to the newspapers. And what I really like about it is it's not just the national newspapers, but you also get the local town rag, which is, you could see from Andrew and William's accident, that it wasn't just sort of the Glasgow Herald, it was the little local one as well. If you have ancestors who were part of the British India Society, went out to either fight in the war or to work for the British India Company, FIBIS, it's the Families in British India Society, be in contact with them. Tons of resources there. For clubs and societies, If your ancestor was a musician and was in a musicians union, those records are available at the archives at Stirling University. Freemasons, you're going to contact the Grand Lodge Scotland, and you are going to have to know where, the time frame, and the lodge number. If you don't know that, they will basically say to you, find it. But if you do have it, then they will give you the information that they have. If your ancestor was a traveler, we called them gypsies. I think here now they're Romanis. There's not a lot of records in terms of, sort of personal information, but sort of to learn more about the lifestyle. These are two really good websites to try. If your ancestor was a British slave owner, of course, there's the database from the University College London. I actually have in January, every year I do a virtual conference, and I have somebody who's going to be talking about this database. If your ancestor was a merchant and had slaves, when abolition came around, the merchants were allowed to go to the Treasury and ask for compensation. They were medieval database. Good luck if you have ancestors that were around in medieval times. That's like 1093 to 1200 and something. I don't know how you would ever find those, but if you did, there's a database for that. Family search, of course. When you get to family search, there are 11 videos for learning about Scottish records. Some of them are outdated. You're going to want to go to the family search wiki, click on Europe. From there, click on Scotland, and then choose your county. This is interactive. And when you click on the county, you will get a listing of all of the records that are available. This is for Lanark, all of the records that are available, and it will tell you where those records are held. So in the case where you see some who are grayed out, it's probably because, well, they're under some other, they're listed under, so Strathbungo is listed under Govan, Tankerton is listed under Covington. You can see these, and it will tell you what records are available and where you can find them. Most of those are not online, but it will give you an idea of where to look. Find My Past just had a huge release of Scottish records. I wasn't able to attend their I want to say coming out party, but I don't even remember what it was called. It was, anyway, they had a launch, I guess it was, but they have just a ton of information on there. So certainly go to Find My Past and look for their blog, and that information is on there, and you don't have to be a member of Find My Past to read the blog. So newspapers are available on Find My Past. Military records are available on Find My Past. Emigration records, they have a few. Again, these are post 1860. They have some Scottish monumental inscriptions on there. They also have a whole pile they just put out that are burial records, because not everybody had a headstone. In fact, most people did not have a headstone. So you need the burial records, which are, they're called lair records, and it's the plot. So the lair is the plot, and the average lair had 6 people, double lair would have 12 people. They would have more than that if there were children buried in there. From the monumental inscription, you can get all kinds of information, of course, as you can from the lair record. The lair record will also tell you who owned the lair and may give you the relationship of the people who were buried together in the lair. When you go to the A to Z records for Find My Past, then go to Scotland, and then to the individual county. And you will get the records there. They also have trade unions. So this is a yearly admission to the union where you paid your dues. They have lists of those. They have Burgess and Guild records. So these were people who were beyond apprenticeship and could now vote, and they were free to hold land and do all sorts of other things. And so there's a listing of them. Again, you get their occupation, details of close relationships, life events, and dates that they were admitted to the role. The Fellows of the Royal College of Surgeons are on Find My Past. These records are actually held at the University of Edinburgh. Again, same sort of information that you would get for the Burgess. Temperance pledges. These were pledges that were taken by preteen kids to say that they were going to abstain from alcohol. Whether they did or not, I guess, is anybody's guess. But they had to pledge this, and then it gives their name, their age, their birth year, the year they took the pledge, and where. They have the Jacobite rebellions of 1715 and 1745. Again, very hard to find. Just Google Jacobite rebellions, ancestry.com. The Glasgow smallpox vaccination records are on Find My Past, as are those who studied anatomy at Anderson's College in Glasgow. why you would want to know that is beyond me. And they have burials from cemetery. There is way more than 280,000 now, way more. They have parish birth and baptisms. These must be, and they have marriages and banns, and they have death records. So these are the new things that have just been added. Ancestry has censuses. Again, it's just the indexes, military records, a directory of Scottish settlers in North America. So these are David Dobson's books, which basically look like reading through a telephone book or a directory. And they have just scanned those and made those searchable, and they're available. So the directory of Scottish settlers in North America, the Scots in the West Indies, those are both David Dobson records. And he's obviously given permission for those to be shared. The North Lanarkshire archives have placed some of their poor law records at the applications and registers online, but only for these 4 specific parishes. Januki, this is like a Cindy's list, but it's specific for UK research, and absolutely vital for you to have a look through here. It will give you all sorts of information and links to other places. So this is Scotland, and it has a whole list of almanacs, archives, cemeteries, church directories, emigration, gazetteers, handwriting information, schools. Everything is on Januki. This is how it's set up, so that you would just literally go into the parish of your choice. And that would be it. We made it to this point. Now, whether we make it to questions or not, I'm not so sure, but we can certainly take a look and see.
Okay, sounds great. Does anybody have any questions?
Not yet. And you know what? It does look like it's charging now, so that's a relief.
You made it.
Oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah, nothing's worse, right?
Yeah,
Last call for
only
questions.
Do they put those in the chat, or how do they do that?
Usually, sometimes people will turn their mic back on and ask a question, but quiet group today.
Do you know what? There was a lot of information. Sometimes it's hard to get through it all.
And they have their handout. So if for some reason you didn't get a handout, let me know. I think I attached it to everybody's email. But yeah, the resources are great. So thank you for doing the handout.
I have a question.
Okay. Sure.
I have a question.
Go for it.
So the hardest thing that I find is that I don't know what county to look in. Like, if I'm starting from scratch, I know that they're Scottish, but where are they from?
Right. So what you're going to want to do is reach out to other places, other people who are also researching. So check the public trees on Ancestry, check the public trees on Family Search, and there's a fabulous website that I can't even remember. What did we do getting started last time? Do you remember what we did? What was our talk on?
It was on the HBC stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, never mind. There's a website called Genes Reunited. So it's GENES Reunited. It's all one word. It's run by the same people who run the British Newspaper Archive and Find My Past. And at one point, they also were doing Scotland's People. And it was the very first tree matching website. And it's like $36 a year or something to belong. You upload your tree, and then they will come back at you with people who are researching those same ancestors. So quite often those people will already have that information either through other records or through the family information or whatever. So I would start, that's where I would start.
And can you tell, like, say somebody's a Cameron, can you tell where the Camerons came from?
You know what? You can tell where they were a bazillion years ago. Where they were recently, not necessarily.
Right.
Right.
So like my ancestor isn't a Cameron, it's Finlay. I don't know. That's not even a...
I don't know. If you're interested in sort of clan information, each clan society does have its own genealogist. It doesn't necessarily mean that your family is in there, though, because they tend to do sort of the lords and on the way down, the chiefs. They don't necessarily do everybody with the same surname. But for instance, in Skye at Armadale Castle, there is the Clandonald Center, and they have pulled the name MacDonald out of every existing record, whether it's censuses, births, marriages, deaths, whatever. So even if they weren't part of that at the time, they do have those records available.
Oh, yeah.
And Clan Cameron, absolutely. They have a society as well. So I would probably check with Clan Cameron USA first. They would certainly be a bigger society than here, and see what information they would have.
I just made that up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
You made it up, yeah. So, and like the Mackays, here we say Mackay, but Mackay, they were all up from Sutherland area. Again, where they are now, it's hard to necessarily know that.
The thing is, all my people left in 1830 or something.
Yeah. So probably came over for land, right?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can come up with this one. I'm just having a look because there was, right here, the Scotsman. Okay, so I'm actually going to just share my, oh, for God's sakes. I'm going to actually share they wanted me to participate in a survey or something stupid. So I just share my screen again. So this is from the Scotsman. And they have an interactive map that shows you where some of the more common surnames were.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So and to find that, I just did a Scottish surname map, and the first result there was for the Scotsman. And I happen to know that that's where it was from because I've used it before.
Thanks very much.
Anybody else have any questions? I guess not. So thank you so much, Christine.
No problem.
Thanks everybody for participating. And like I said, if you didn't get the handout, let me know and I'll forward it to you. And I'm sure we'll see you again soon, Christine, at some point. And
great.
Take care in the meantime, and everybody be safe. Take care, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Okay,
thanks,
bye,
Jane.
everybody.
Bye.